Hey artists! Welcome to another tutorial. Today we're going to be learning how to paint this majestic and fierce roaring lion portrait. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be painting with oil paints, but you can also get the same effects with acrylics. I highly recommend using a slow drying medium with your acrylics to extend that drying time, and it's going to make your painting process so much easier. You can find the list of colors that I used here on the screen. If you're craving more help with painting a realistic wildlife easily, then you will love the Wildlife Painting Academy. Each month, new masterclasses are added, complete with my voice walking you through every moment, paint mixing recipes, reference photos, and so much more. You can check it out in the link in the description of this video. So I'm starting off by mapping out the darkest parts of my painting first. I'm working with a really large brush here, and I'm working with ivory black. I like to do this so it kind of grounds everything in that painting and gives you a really nice map to be able to work from. I really wanted this fierce lion to just pop, so I went with a really nice dark background here that's going to add a lot of contrast for our lion. So now I'm going through with a really dark brown, mostly burnt umber here with a little bit of burnt sienna, and I'm going to start to add those next darkest parts of my painting. So here I'm kind of carving out where the shadows in the mane are going to fall. Now that I've got my darkest parts mapped out, I'm going to start moving to lighter tones, fleshing out more of that fur. Now into those shadows, I'm going to start to build up some highlights here with a lighter color of paint. We're going with a nice gold here, and we're going to start to build up that crazy lion mane. So this mane here, it actually kind of falls in chunks. The hair tends to stick together a little bit, which is so much fun to paint, and it's going to allow us to build up a really nice structure in that mane. So we're going to have lots of shadows and lots of highlights and lots of room for all that gorgeous texture that we want. So now I'm working my way around the painting here and starting to flesh out the lighter tones with a nice pale golden tone. I'm still working with a really big brush here. I want to work with the largest brush possible so that I can cover a lot of ground, but also so that it prevents me from jumping into detail too quickly. So I'm starting to flesh out the tongue a little bit. I'm going to start by using mostly just burnt sienna and titanium white and a bit of ivory black here. So keeping the tongue mostly a natural brown color at first, and then we're going to go in with glazes and add that nice little punch of pink. So now that my underpainting is mostly complete, I'm going to go in with a slightly smaller filbert brush here, and I'm going to start to build up my first pass of texture and detail in that fur. So I'm aiming for a light gold tone here. So I'm using a lot of titanium white that's mixed with a bit of burnt umber, a bit of burnt sienna, and also a little bit of yellow ochre for that nice golden kiss we're looking for. When you're painting fur, you always want to be aware of the direction that the fur is flowing, but also the shape. So this lion here has a lot of nice wave in that fur. So we got to make sure that we are trying our best to emulate that. So now I'm going to start to build up even more fur texture here. I'm going in with a small filbert brush and some lighter paint, and I'm starting to carve out those individual hairs that are going to make up that mane. This is easily one of my favorite parts of the painting. There's just something so satisfying of, building up that texture, especially when we're painting something like a flowing mane. Oh, so much fun. So when I started to build up that texture, I lost a little bit of darkness in those shadows. So now I'm going back in with some burnt umber, and I'm gonna carve out those shadows in the mane again. So now I'm in that part of the painting where I'm constantly bouncing back and forth between strengthening those shadows and then also adding more texture and highlights to really build up that beautiful fur texture that we want. Now I'm switching to a round brush here, a bit of a smaller one, and it comes to a really nice fine point. So I'm gonna start to build up some tight detail here in specific spots in the mane. So you want to make sure that you're matching the length of your brush strokes to the length of the fur in each of the areas that you're painting. For instance, around the eyes and around the muzzle, the fur is going to be a lot shorter than, say, in the mane. So you got to make sure that you're paying close attention to these qualities in your reference photo so that we can paint, as realistic a lion as we can. And now it's time for a little bit of glazing magic. Up until this point, my painting was fairly monochromatic and I let it sit for a few days so it could dry. And now I'm going in with a beautiful glaze using burnt sienna to really punch up that saturation and add that gorgeous glowing warmth of that golden fur. Glazing is easily one of my favorite techniques ever, and you could really see the magic of it here, of how it just brings everything to life. Now I'm going in and I'm going to go in with a sort of pinkish glaze here to add a nice little fleshy hue to that tongue and the nose too. So now I'm going in with the final touch into that wet glaze layer. I like to work in my final layer of highlights and details. I like doing this into the wet glaze so that it flows a little bit better, it's a little more transparent and looks more natural. So go in with a nice small brush like I have here and add those final highlights. And don't forget about those whiskers. I always forget about the whiskers. And we're done. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial for this gorgeous roaring lion. Hopefully you can use what you learned here to create a beautiful painting of your own. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Please hit that big beautiful subscribe button if you want to keep learning how to paint realistic wildlife easily. If there are any animals that you want to learn how to paint, leave me a comment and I will add it to the list. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.